The courtroom fell silent. Not a cough. Not a whisper. The man who once commanded thousands from the pulpit now stood trembling before a judge. His silk robe replaced by a stiff prison uniform. His voice, the same voice that once promised salvation, now cracked as he whispered, "I am innocent. God knows my heart." But then, the prosecutor lifted a single sheet of paper, and with one shocking sentence, the entire courtroom gasped. This was the bombshell no one saw coming. To understand how we got here, we must go back. The story begins in a small but bustling town. Every Sunday, the streets were packed. Not because of markets or politics, but because of one man, Pastor Elias Monroe. He was no ordinary preacher. He was charismatic, eloquent, and handsome. His sermons weren't just religious talks, they were performances. The choir sang like angels. The lights gleamed on polished marble floors. People said walking into his church felt like stepping into heaven itself. For years, families poured money into his ministry. Single mothers gave their last coins. Businessmen donated millions. And Elias always had the same promise: sow into the kingdom, and blessings will follow. But behind the perfect smile, shadows were forming. It started with whispers. A woman claimed she had been taken advantage of after a late-night private counseling session. Another accused him of manipulating her into silence, saying God would punish her if she spoke out. At first, no one believed them. Who would dare accuse the man of God? But then, tragedy struck. One evening, paramedics were called to the church guest house. A young woman, barely 19, was found unconscious. She never woke up. The official report claimed natural causes. But her mother refused to stay quiet. She told reporters, "My daughter left home to serve God. Instead, she was served to a monster." That statement lit the match. Police opened an inquiry. At first, Elias acted calm. He smiled during press conferences, holding a Bible, insisting he was the victim of persecution. But the deeper investigators dug, the darker the secrets they found. Financial records showed millions funneled into personal accounts overseas. Hidden properties registered under fake names. And most chilling of all, testimonies from multiple women, all with strikingly similar stories. One detail sent shivers down the spines of detectives. Each woman described the same chilling ritual. Elias would ask them to kneel. He would lay his hands on their heads, whispering scripture. Then, the prayers would take a sinister turn. The media exploded. Headlines screamed, "Pastor or predator?" Crowds gathered outside the church, some demanding justice, others crying it was all lies. But the truth could no longer be buried. The trial was set. And from day one, it was chaos. The prosecution painted Elias as a manipulator who used faith as a weapon. They showed bank statements, text messages, and survivor testimonies. Each word cracked the once holy image of the preacher. But the defense fought back hard. They called him a healer, a man of miracles. They accused the victims of conspiring for money. At times, the courtroom felt more like a theater than a trial. Then came the bombshell. On the third week, prosecutors introduced evidence never seen before. A secret recording. One of Elias's closest assistants had been wearing a wire. The jury leaned in. The judge adjusted his glasses. And then, Elias's own voice echoed through the speakers. "Don't worry. God forgives me, and they will never believe you." The room froze. But just when it seemed the case was closed, something shocking happened. Elias's lawyers presented their own evidence. A sworn affidavit from a former detective who claimed the entire investigation was tainted. That key witnesses were bribed. That the assistant who wore the wire had been promised immunity in exchange for a confession. Suddenly, doubt filled the air. Was Elias truly guilty? Or was this a setup? The jury shifted uncomfortably. The judge called for recess. Reporters rushed outside, screaming into cameras, "The case has just taken a dramatic turn." And that's when Elias smiled. For the first time since his arrest, he smiled. As the trial dragged on, the town split in two. Some believed justice was near. Others swore their pastor was being crucified unfairly. Families turned against each other. friendships shattered. And then, just as the final verdict loomed, Elias collapsed in the courtroom, clutching his chest. Paramedics rushed in. Was it a heart attack? A panic attack? Or something else entirely? The trial was halted, the verdict delayed. And as he was wheeled out, Elias whispered something chilling to a reporter who leaned too close. "They can cage me, but they'll never silence me. The truth will bury them before it buries me." The cameras caught it all. The world watched in shock. And the question remains, was Elias Monroe a criminal or a victim of a much bigger conspiracy? When faith is twisted, it can become the sharpest weapon of all. It can heal or it can destroy. But now we ask you, what do you believe? Is Elias a predator hiding behind religion? Or is there a darker force manipulating the entire story? The cameras flashed. The air was heavy. Pastor Elias Monroe's body was lifted onto a stretcher. His once commanding voice silenced by oxygen masks, his hands twitching as paramedics wheeled him away. The courtroom was in chaos. Jurors whispered nervously. Reporters shouted over one another. The judge pounded his gavel, but no one listened. And in that moment, one haunting question hung in the air. Was this a genuine collapse or the perfect escape? News channels erupted. Some called it a divine attack. Others whispered poison. Conspiracy theories exploded online. The government is trying to silence him. This is proof God is punishing him. He faked it to delay justice. 4 days, the trial was suspended. Outside the hospital where Elias was kept, crowds gathered. Some prayed for his healing. Others demanded his immediate imprisonment. Inside his hospital room, security was tight. The walls smelled of disinfectant. Machines beeped steadily. But despite the tubes and wires, Elias managed to give one final televised statement. "They tried to break me, but I will rise again. This is bigger than me. The truth will shake this nation." The clip went viral. 3 weeks later, Elias returned to court. He walked in slowly, pale, but smiling faintly. The air was electric. Everyone knew this was more than a trial. It was a war of perception. The prosecution struck first. They paraded more survivors, each with trembling voices, each echoing the same chilling experiences. The gallery wept. Jurors turned away in discomfort. But then the defense delivered its blow. They introduced documents claiming key witnesses had been paid by a mysterious advocacy group. They hinted at political motives. They suggested Elias was being targeted because his church had grown too powerful. And the shocking part? Some of the evidence looked real. That's when whispers of a conspiracy became screams. Reporters uncovered strange connections. The advocacy group that funded survivors? Linked to a rival politician Elias once denounced from the pulpit. Detectives who testified? One had been previously suspended for corruption. And then, the biggest twist. A leaked email showed a prosecutor discussing how to frame the narrative so Elias doesn't walk free. The defense pounced. They told the jury, if they can twist the truth once, how do you know what's real? The case that once seemed airtight was now tangled in smoke and shadows. But amidst the noise, one voice cut through. The mother of the 19-year-old girl who died. She walked to the stand with shaking hands, clutching her daughter's photograph. Her voice broke as she spoke. "I don't care about politics. I don't care about conspiracies. My daughter is gone." And the last person she trusted was him. The courtroom fell silent. Tears rolled down faces, even jurors. Elias looked down. For the first time, he seemed truly shaken. Then came the final twist. An anonymous package was delivered to the courthouse. Inside, a flash drive. On it, hidden camera footage from inside the church office. The video showed Elias speaking with senior staff. His words clear, undeniable. "Keep the girls quiet. Pay whoever you need to pay. God will forgive me. The world never will." The defense objected furiously, claiming it was doctored. But forensic experts confirmed the audio was authentic. The jury gasped. Some even cried. And just like that, the balance tipped. The tension was unbearable. After weeks of testimony, lies, faith, and fear, the jury returned. The foreman stood, holding a small slip of paper. His voice trembled as he spoke. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." The words echoed like thunder. Yes, cheers. Shouts of justice, mixed with cries of lies. Elias's face drained of color. His hands gripped the table. And then he smiled again. Not a smile of joy, not of fear, but a cold, knowing smile. As if he knew something the rest of the world didn't. Weeks later, the judge delivered his decision. Elias Monroe was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The gallery erupted, half cheering, half weeping. But Elias's final words before being led away chilled everyone. "You think this ends here? My fall is only the beginning. Watch who falls next." The courtroom froze. Reporters scribbled furiously. His followers clung to every word, convinced their leader had spoken a prophecy. Today, Elias sits behind bars. His ministry dissolved. His fortune seized. His name stained forever. But his followers? Many still believe. They call him a martyr. They say the trial was rigged. They wait for his return. And that is the most chilling part. Because sometimes, even when justice is served, the shadow of doubt never truly disappears. Faith can inspire hope, but in the wrong hands, it can also blind. Elias Monroe's story forces us to ask, when does faith become fanaticism? And when the line between truth and lies blurs, who do you believe? Tell us in the comments below. Because the story of Elias Monroe isn't over. The words still echo in the minds of everyone who heard them. You think this ends here? My fall is only the beginning. Watch who falls next. Pastor Elias Monroe had just been sentenced to life in prison. His ministry collapsed. His reputation destroyed. But as he was led away in chains, he didn't look broken. He looked confident. And that single cryptic sentence would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. In the weeks after the trial, strange things began to happen. Several witnesses who testified against Elias started receiving threats. Anonymous phone calls in the middle of the night. Notes left on doorsteps. Some even reported being followed. At first, police brushed it off as fanatics acting out. But then, one of the witnesses was found dead. It was ruled a suicide. But her family insisted she was terrified, not depressed. She told them she feared someone was coming for her. The community began to panic. Was Elias's warning coming true? Meanwhile, behind the cold steel doors of Blackridge Penitentiary, Elias was adjusting to his new reality. But unlike most inmates, Elias wasn't isolated. He quickly gathered followers inside. Men who had lost hope, men hungry for purpose. And Elias gave them exactly that. In the yard, his voice carried like a sermon. You may be prisoners here, but your souls are free. They cannot cage the chosen. Guards reported that whenever Elias spoke, dozens of inmates would kneel, listening like disciples. His power hadn't died in the courtroom. It had only transformed. Months later, a journalist uncovered something shocking. Buried deep in financial records seized during the investigation, there was evidence of large payments made not just to Elias, but to politicians, judges, and even senior law enforcement. One name stood out, a high-ranking prosecutor on Elias's case. The journalist published the findings. And suddenly, the narrative flipped. Had Elias been guilty? But was he also right? Was there a deeper web of corruption tied to his downfall? The public was shaken. Amid the chaos, the survivors fought to keep their voices heard. One young woman, Grace, gave a powerful interview. Her voice trembled but carried strength. This was never just about Elias. It was about every person in power who looked away. Every hand that took money to protect him. They're as guilty as he is. Her words struck a chord. Protests erupted outside government offices. People demanded investigations into the system itself. What began as one man's trial had turned into a battle against corruption at the highest levels. Inside prison, Elias watched the news. He smiled when he saw protests erupting. His words had lived beyond the bars. But Elias wasn't done. Through coded letters and secret meetings, he orchestrated a movement. His followers called it the True Kingdom. Their message? Elias was innocent. He was a prophet. And the real criminals were those in government. What terrified authorities most was how quickly the movement spread. Social media flooded with hashtags. Rallies filled the streets. Some even called for his release. Then came the revelation that turned everything upside down. A former aide, once loyal to Elias, stepped forward with a confession. She revealed Elias had not only manipulated women, but also kept hidden journals. In them, he wrote about his crimes in chilling detail. Names, dates, even prayers he said afterward, begging God for forgiveness while planning the next act. The journals were verified. Pages stained with his handwriting. His own words betraying him. The illusion shattered. Even some of his most loyal followers began to question. Elias was brought back into court for new charges based on the journals. This time, there was no theater. No conspiracy claims. No twisted sermons. Just his own words. The survivors sat in the gallery, holding hands, tears streaming as the pages were read aloud. For the first time, Elias lowered his head. No smile. No prophecy. Just silence. The judge's words rang heavy. Your deception ends today. You will never walk free again. And in that moment, the courtroom wasn't filled with chaos. It was filled with relief. Months later, life began to heal. The survivors formed a support group, turning their pain into power. They worked together, building a foundation to help others escape religious abuse. Grace, the young woman who once trembled on the stand, now stood tall, leading marches, her voice strong and unshaken. The church once ruled by Elias was transformed into a community center. Where once there was manipulation, now there was hope. Children played in halls once filled with lies. Families gathered, not to worship a man, but to support each other. And as the sun set over the small town, one truth remained. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about healing the broken. Elias Monroe may have stolen lives, twisted faith, and poisoned trust. But in the end, he could not stop the light from breaking through. Faith can be twisted. Power can corrupt. But truth, no matter how long it hides, will always come to light. The survivors' voices proved stronger than the lies. And in their courage, we find hope. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more stories that expose the darkness and shine a light on the truth. Comment below, do you believe men like Elias are born corrupt? Or does power change them? And watch our next episode, because the fight for justice never truly ends. This is Dark Justice Files.